Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing The Bear Season 2, and today we are on Episode 9, titled Omelette. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, Sarah, kick us off with you've been liking the Hulu summary, so I'm going to say kick us off with a Hulu summary.
Yeah, I slacked off on my job and I forgot to write down the Hulu summary for this episode. But I can guarantee you that it was much shorter than what I am about to read from IMDb. Oh my gosh. Jen, I need you to note that there are 3 semicolons in this.
Every
summary.
English teacher in the nation.
I need you to be prepared for this.
Just cringing.
The Bear is set for its soft opening. Sydney feels pressured to impress her father. Carmi begins to second-guess things. Natalie informs Carmi that she has invited their mother.
Oh my gosh. Well, the silver lining is that each chunk of the sentence is comprehensible and short and concise. Like, we've gotten some IMDb summaries in the past that are like so many long clauses strung together, and you're like, I don't know what's the subject and the verb. We don't know anymore. But this one, it's really clear. It's really clear.
Yeah, we know what's going on. It's a very clear list of everything that happens in the episode. They did great.
Okay, well, let's start off with our episode titles of choice for this episode. What is yours?
Mine is Parm for Carm.
Dude, nice. I loved that little detail. That was wonderful. So great. And the 4 is a 4, the letter 4. Or sorry, the number 4, and not spelled out. That's just the extra little cherry on top.
Mm-hmm. Yep, with a heart on it, which is also on brand.
My episode title is Listen Better.
Nice. Yes.
That stroke of genius. Okay. Well, here we are. Second to last episode of this entire season 2. I'm excited to hear your thoughts about episode 9. What did you think of this episode? And I don't know. I just feel like a lot happens in this episode. So there's going to be a lot to unpack. But tell me your overall thoughts about episode 9.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about this episode is that you get to see this continuation of growth from all the characters, and you also see the anxiety and the panic in a lot of them as well. And so it's this interesting balance of growth and progress, and also really intense anxiety that they're all feeling for a variety of ways, as you know, life is really closing in on them, and the restaurant opening is imminent. And so I think that this is just another kind of continuation of the last episode. It's not as feel good, but it's continuing this trajectory of the whole team is back together, they're working together, and you're seeing more of how they are able to work together, and people leaning into their strengths, relying on some other characters instead of trying to do it all themselves. And it's a really good lead in to friends and family. And okay, what's going to happen with the friends and family night? Because the friends and family that are coming, it could be explosive. So it's so interesting how this show is balancing all of those things, and balancing the fear and the anxiety that some of them are having about this night, about the restaurant, and then about their lives. And yet it's still a really good time with these characters as they're preparing. So I think it's a fun episode in and of itself, but then it's also paving the way for the season finale.
This really does feel like such a tee up for all that will occur in the finale. And I think we end on this cliffhanger of like the lock finally being unlocked, the doors are opening, and how will it go? And so I feel like this episode captured the like pre-show jitters really well, where you can see that everyone's excited and there's like a buzz and a glow associated with this exciting thing that they're right on the cusp of. And there's some really like fun little moments and feel good moments like that where people are preparing their things and they're celebrating each other, and like Richie and Fack are in the bathroom looking all spiffy. Like there's that excitement, and yet there's also, like you mentioned, brimming beneath the surface, this like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I feel like you see that a little bit more in some of the characters that we know tend to be a little bit more high strung, tend to be more warriors. So I feel like Sugar, Carmi, and Sydney, you can like see it more palpably on them in the ways that they are feeling that sense of anticipation. So that really great blending of those two feelings together, I think is really interesting and tees up. I don't know, for us as the viewers, I'm also like getting pre-show jitters for what will happen at this Friends and Family opening night. I feel like there's all of that backdrop of the logistical like mission that we've been on over the course of this season, which is, will we open the bear? And the answer seems to be yes, we will. And how will it go? There's a lot of like relational things that happen in this episode as well, which I thought was like so fascinating, and some interesting like thread lines that are being pulled in really interesting directions. So there's a whole like Carmi and Sydney scene that I'm looking at from the side of my eye, being like, where are we going with this? And then kind of on like the other side of that coin is there's a moment with Marcus and Sydney as well. So there's just these other like relational things that I'm like, are we real? Are we going there? Are we going there? I hope we're not going there, but I think we might be going there. So I think all of that is also really fascinating for the show to do in this like penultimate episode right before the big explosive finale. So I'm now on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, there is so much to be excited about and so much to be looking forward to and so much to be maybe worried or concerned or anxious about. So I think it's a really good tee up for the season finale.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting to think about this penultimate episode in conversation with the one from season one, where we see that there is stress and there is anxiety, but all the characters now have the skill sets to maybe handle all of those in a little bit of a healthier way and lean on each other and support each other. And so even just like the interesting echoing or the narrative arc of these two penultimate episodes, words are hard today, and the moments of stress and anxiety, we're seeing our characters grow and be able to handle them maybe in a little bit of a healthier way, which is really really neat to see as well. Because the penultimate episode of season one, everyone just feeds each other stress and anxiety, versus this one, they're really soothing each other's anxiety and anticipation for this big event.
Yeah, they have better tools to cope with that stress, and they've also built up more relational equity than they had in the first season as well. I think it was really smart that Marcus even references that in his dish when he comments about how Carmi threw it on the floor. And so I love that kind of mirroring. You see that they're in very different places than they were a season ago, and they're all dealing with stress. They're all dealing with it a little bit differently, and we know, because the show keeps reminding us, that they have put themselves in a very stressful situation, because opening a restaurant is hard, keeping a restaurant open is even harder, and you always have Uncle Jimmy coming in telling them just how impossible this is. And then the show also shows us other restaurants closing that we've visited. And so I love that the show is constantly reminding us of the tension and the stakes of what they're doing. You know, our characters aren't just anxious, but they're very real factors that are causing them to be so stressed. And the show is so good about giving us those insights so we're able to feel those things with them as they are, you know, going about their day in the kitchen.
Yeah, Uncle Jimmy's role seems to be like the character to usher in the stakes. You know what I mean? I feel like multiple times a season, it makes sense for his character because he's the one that's got the money on the line that he'll shut it down if they don't deliver. And it's cool that he's rooting for them, but also the very real stakes that he could sustain consistently is like, will we be able to open or not? Like, there's this timeline. Hello. And so it's neat to see that the show uses his character to create stakes, and they make sense narratively as well, but it creates a sense of tension for us. Okay. What are some of the big things that stand out to you in this episode that we should definitely start with and talk about?
I mean, which character do you want to start with? I feel like there's, like you said, there's a lot that happens in this episode.
There is a lot. Well, let me start out with one of the things that I referenced earlier, which is there seems to be some things that the show is doing with Carmi and Sid. And I am curious if you felt the same and what your thoughts are about that whole situation. There's this like warm, fuzzy feeling that's developing between them that I feel like the show is setting up for something, or at least like getting our brains to think in a direction. So, for example, the show opens with this episode, opens with a whole scene with Carmi and Claire. And then it proceeds to show Carmi kind of in a state of stress and anxiety about his budding relationship with Claire. And it's intercut with these shots of Sydney. And I'm curious your thoughts about that whole bit. And then obviously later on, we get the whole scene where they're under the table and are expressing themselves in a really like fascinating way, but also this is just feeding all of the internet theories. So I am intrigued to hear your stance on what you think the show is doing, or maybe not. Maybe this is the interwebs thinking too deeply into some of those cues.
Yeah, I think it's just the interwebs being the interwebs. I think I viewed that as them in very different places because they're both dealing with different things. You know, Carmi is opening up emotionally and is having to learn how to like connect to other people, and the restaurant is just part of that and part of that journey. And this journey for Sydney is very different, and we've seen how much she's given of herself to this restaurant and how much it means to her. And she even has that conversation with her dad of like, this has to work because I don't think I have another one in me. And so I think it's just a contrast of where these two business partners are mentally, and kind of the journey that they are both going on in their leadership. And in some ways, Sydney is so much more stable and steady and kind of knows what she's doing, whereas Carmi is kind of a whole hot mess. And I think that contrast is really notable, especially because over the last episode, you know, Tina talks about with Ibra the importance of a team and having people to have your back when you're freaking out. And I feel like this episode is just a continuation of the former episode of showing it's a team. And that's a lesson that Carmi has had to learn over this season too, is that it's not just on him, but he can rely on his team. So I think it's more of that. Like I don't know. I didn't read anything into it, but I also don't want to read anything into it because I think that that's just the wrong way to go with the show. And honestly, if the show makes that choice of them to have like something more like a romantic something, that would almost be one of those where I'm like, okay, I might be done watching.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that's just the wrong way to go. So I hope that the internet is very, very wrong, because I think that would be the wrong way to go.
I agree. I will be upset if that happens. But then my question is, why intercut like shots of Sid into the shots of Claire when Carmi's having his whole little breakdown. I mean, maybe it's he feels like he's failing these relationships that are really important to him. I don't know, but there's the show. I don't think the show is like not self-aware enough to recognize that like there are these like cues that they can drop and you can do with it what you will. But I just think it's fascinating that they are offering these little signs, and I'm not going to be a happy camper if they go down that path. But I do think it's interesting that while Sydney seems like the like healthier, more stable of the two, I think her journey with this is so fascinating because she has given so much to the point where sometimes she can put too much pressure on herself. And I love that opening conversation with her father where he detects that, recognizes that, understands how she's wired, and is attempting to help alleviate some of this pressure that she has perhaps carried the burdens of. And him saying like this doesn't have to be the thing. And while like this is very important to her and he may not understand that fully, I do think that there's something that he's picking up on, which is that she goes all in on the things that she's passionate about, and there's a healthy way to do that. And then when it's overextended, that's when it can become really unhealthy, or when that doesn't work out, or you reach failure, or and things don't go as planned. Just perhaps her tendency to potentially beat herself up over it and really be self-critical. And so I think we've seen her go through that in the past over the course of the past 2 seasons. And it's just really fascinating to see her figuring out this healthy relationship with this thing that she absolutely loves and is so passionate about. And yet, how do we ensure that it is not the only thing that is she's drawing her source of worth and identity from, which she could easily do. And I think Carmi's journey over this season has been something very different. But I think this specifically, what Sydney's going through, is also one that he is no stranger to as well, which is I think why they are so similar in a lot of ways. And I think their tendencies can be very similar as well. So it's fascinating to watch them like try and work that out together.
And I love that we get to see a little bit more of Sydney's support system. I loved that conversation with her dad. You know, he says, "I have no idea what you do, but I am excited."
Yeah.
And just the way that he encourages her, and like she's putting so much pressure on herself because she doesn't want to be a burden to her dad. She doesn't want to keep living with her dad, you know, like all of this. And he just makes it so clear that she is safe there and she can stay for as long as she wants. And I loved that even though they disagree on some things and everything isn't perfect, that he is still there for her, and there's so much love there. And so it's just it's nice because we don't know what's going to happen with this restaurant, and we see Carmi being unstable and not a great partner and just all of the chaos. So we don't know if this restaurant is going to work. So it's this nice little nod of like, no matter what happens, Sydney will be okay and she will have this landing place and she will be taken care of. Like, so we don't have to be maybe as concerned about her, even though she would be devastated and all of the things. I loved that the show includes that for us, that bit of softness before we go into the madness of the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think especially because there's a scene earlier in this season, there's an episode earlier in this season where Sydney's talking with her dad, and they have a little bit of tension because he doesn't understand fully. And so I think that makes this scene in this episode feel even more meaningful because we understand that he really is trying to relate to her and understand her passions, even though he might have not expressed it fully or in the best way in the past. But this is his way to build bridges with his daughter. And it's not always been this like really rosy, smooth sailing road to their relationship and kind of the tensions around her passions and her willingness to give so much to this thing. But he's trying. And I think that makes this scene much more meaningful as well, because we got that scene earlier in the show.
And he ends with "Love you, chef."
Yeah.
Oh, so
So cute.
cute. Even her dad calls her
Mhm.
chef. Amazing.
It is very good. It is very good. There's another Sid scene that I really loved in this episode, which is her making the omelet for Sugar. And I think in the show
Hmm.
we've seen her ambitions and her drive, and she's expressed that she wants the star, she wants this restaurant to be great. But I love that the show also grounds us in kind of what Richie learns in the previous episodes, where it's really about this care and attention and way to love on people through food. And I love that we get so much screen time of her just so tenderly making this meal for this woman who is pregnant, and this is her one craving, and she just puts so much care and attention into it. And then after she gives it to Sugar, she also lingers a little bit in the room to see Sugar's reaction and watch her face light up, and hear her like ooh and ah at how amazing it tastes. And you see how much that really fuels and makes Sydney feel really happy. And I thought that was a really sweet moment, because we often see this really ambitious side of her, but it's not really about the accolades or the recognition or being the best for Sydney. Like ultimately, she fell in love with this craft because of this type of thing, this moment, the ability to care for people in this way. So I loved that little scene.
Yeah, I love how the show is so intentional at balancing that in Sid, because we've seen a few times throughout the show where she's expressed that her love for food originates with just wanting to take care of people. And the show is so smart in balancing that desire for caring for people and that desire to be ambitious and get a star and all of those things. And I love that both of those things exist within Sydney. You know, she's not just this super high achiever go-getter. She is that, but she's also more, and she has this deeper drive within her to care for people, and that all tracks with her leadership style and her empathy and all of these things
Mm-hmm.
that we've already talked about. And so just the intelligence of the writing of this show to make sure that we're constantly getting these two sides of her in balance, so we're never too far in one or the other to make her into like a caricature, but to keep her feeling grounded and like a real person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. Especially knowing the pacing and the timing of when we need to balance that out too. The show is really smart with. Also, that omelet just looked freaking amazing, and also sour cream and onion potato chips on top of my eggs. Like I need to try this. Oh my goodness!
Right? Where's the recipe for this? Because that omelet looked incredible. I
So
want it
good.
right now.
It was also like so much butter in that pan to cook it too. It was like, I'm sure that's what they do at
Right?
restaurants, which is why it probably tastes incredible. But I was like, wow, so half a stick of butter right in there. All right, let's go.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's how you know it's
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Other big things that happen in this episode.
I mean, Sugar invited their
Yeah.
mom to friends and
Yeah.
family.
Hmm. So we know it's going to be a juicy episode uh, in the next one. Although I think it's really fascinating, where I think it's Carmi that has a conversation later with somebody, but he essentially articulates like there's this like need that Sugar has to feel connected, to feel like mom's gonna be here. And I appreciate that Carmi is willing to be honest and kind of like temper her expectations around that too in the conversation that he has with her. But it is a fascinating little detail that we get about Sugar in the present, because I feel like we saw that side of her, um, this need to feel like she's able to connect with her mother and be around her and whatnot, and to have that be good. And we saw that in the flashback episode, but it's just fascinating to see that like that part of her and that understanding of how she's wired that Carmi has is still there and is very much a part of that gesture that she's looking to make mom feel included and to make her feel like she's connected in with the family. And I appreciate that Carmi is willing to say, I okay, thanks for letting me know that you did that. And also just like tempering her expectations so that if mom doesn't show up, there's perhaps a little bit less disappointment, and that fall of the emotions and the excitement for maybe if mom will show up will be a little bit more tempered. So all of that I thought was really interesting. And I think because that flashback episode is still so fresh in our minds. I think it was only like a couple episodes ago, in that halfway point of the season, that the significance of mom potentially coming or not coming and all the emotions surrounding that feel still so fresh.
Yeah, that mom episode is really hard to forget.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's real top of mind. But I love the foils that Carmi and Sugar are in that conversation that they have about it, because Carmi is like, okay, I can be okay if she comes, but can you be okay if she doesn't come? And you see how both of them deal with their mom in very different ways. Their relationship with their mom is very different. Both are struggling with how to connect and relate to their mom, but in different ways. And so you just see more of how these two are so different from each other, and they both have developed very different coping mechanisms. And now, on this very, very stressful night where everything has to go right, there is this looming presence who might come to potentially disrupt everything. And even if she doesn't come, she's still going to be a disruptor in some way. And so I think that conversation is so good at revealing characters, but then also setting up a disaster, honestly, either way. If she comes, it could be a disaster. If she doesn't come, it could still be a disaster. And so again, the show is so smart in kind of planting those seeds that will be harvested at a later date.
Yeah. I think that's what's genius about that whole scene too, is that either way, we know that there's going to be emotion. And so the entire next episode, I'm going to be, the edge of my seat anticipating like when mom walks through the door, what will happen. But also if mom doesn't walk through the door, you can feel the growing sense of emotion that will come over all of the characters that really care about this. And especially Sugar, but I think also for Carmi and for Carmi as well, and maybe Richie as well. Like I think that there's still going to be some blowback or impact either way, which is kind of genius because we are going to be waiting and the stakes have been set already for what will occur, and all of the emotions that will come as well. So I think that it's just really smart writing, because I think it's obvious to us that mom showing up is going to be a big deal, but I think maybe what is less obvious to us that the show is able to explicitly communicate through Carmi's dialogue with Sugar is if mom doesn't show up, it's equally potentially just as emotional, and its ability to explicitly position it that way in our minds is really smart.
So we have to come back for the finale. We have to come back and see what happens. Yeah. Will mom show up? Will she stay away? What's going to happen? We don't know.
Oh, man. I'm nervous. And that is on top of also having to do the restaurant opening for the first time, and the timing of everything, the dishes, the logistics, like that's on top of all of that, which is also I think this episode also does a good job of showcasing like there's a lot of logistical choreography that happens in the timing of letting people in back in the kitchen, all of the dishes being prepared and figuring all of those things out for the first time. I think the show's done a good job of setting us up and cluing us into the logistical parts of that, because sometimes that could be glossed over in movies or shows where you're like, okay, it's a big thing, but like I feel like we get a really great glimpse into preparation, cutting of vegetables, then passing them down to the next person who will do that step, and then the timing of letting people in every 15 minutes and when it will be full. Like every detail has been so thought over so much. And so figuring out all of those logistical things is on top of all of the emotional stuff, which is, I think, a kind of great microcosm of like the journey we've gone on with this show and this episode and this season so far. Is just there's this logistical mission in the physical realm of opening this restaurant and passing all of the tests and all of the kind of stuff and figuring out our equipment and hiring people. And that in of itself, honestly, is a thrilling journey already, let alone the emotional journeys that are layered on top of that. So both of those things coming together is really, really fun tension, really fun stakes.
And I love that the characters are all so sober-minded about the opening. Like, obviously it's exciting and they're excited for friends and family, and it's going to be like so satisfying for people to come in and see the restaurant and serve all these people and all of this. But you don't see a lot of that excitement emotion from the characters. It's a lot of, like you were saying, it's just, we got to do this task. We got to get these things done. We got to check all these things off our list. Is everything set? Does everybody know their rules? Like it's so focused on the logistics, which is, I mean, at least that's how I've always been. Whenever like it's okay, it's go time. There's a big launch, teams like, okay, we just got to be focused on what's going on. So it feels like you are part of this team, and it's this just sobriety of, okay, we're here to do a job. Can we do it? And that's what remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a really great little moment where when they have the like full team meeting with everybody, where Carmy says, hey, that's going to be messy. Things are probably going to go wrong. That's what this is for. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. We're going to learn some things. And just the way that he leads and sets the tone and the culture for that, of like, we should expect things are going to go wrong, and we're not going to beat ourselves up for it. We're not going to be critical and up each other's throats about it, because that's what this is for, and that's part of the process so that we get it right. I thought just like the way that he leads in creating space and permission for mistakes and for inefficiencies and all of the things that inevitably will go wrong, and ironing out the kinks of all of this. I think that was just such a great moment of leadership from him to communicate to his team, and just a moment of growth for him, because we know that like part of his journey and his passion for this with Sid is to create environments where people can thrive and we make space for the human being. And it's such a contrast to those exacting environments that they've been in the past. So it's just cool to see him like really lean into that, because that was part of the vision and the excitement for opening up the Bear to begin with.
Well, and what I love about that is it's that callback to that moment that he had with Marcus. But I think it's also one of those moments of, okay, Carmy, you're saying this, but can you do this too? Because we saw in the previous season when he was stressed and everything was going wrong and everyone was at their worst, he lost it completely. He treated employees in a way that was not acceptable. And so it's setting the stage of like, this is how he wants to lead. This is how he wants things to go. But when the rubber hits the road, has he grown as much as we think he's grown? And so it's a really good sentiment. It's a really good thing to say, but it's going to be interesting to see how he responds when everything goes wrong. And
that's one of the like open questions, open threads that's like looming pretty big for me, is what will Carmy choose? And has he learned and found healthy balance, or is he going to continue to operate in his extremes? Because I think throughout this entire season, we've seen him trying to juggle like his personal life and his professional life and all of the responsibilities and ways he wants to steward all of those well, but he's kind of like not doing it really well. And there's that kind of pep talk scene that Uncle Jimmy has that conversation with him around like, you need to focus, you need to give this your all. And while there's some aspects of that that I really loved, because having people like speak into your life and be able to like give you hard truths is really good and really healthy. But there's also some of the things that Uncle Jimmy was saying that I was like, this is low key potentially kind of toxic for who Carmi is, where he might take this and run with it and go back to his extremes where he's blocked out everything else and not found healthy balance, and he's just giving himself entirely over to work. And I just wonder because there's the wind could blow in either direction at this point, but we really haven't seen him figure out healthy balance yet. And I hope he does by this season finale, but like I'm not sure which way he will go and if he will find the ability to be able to do both well and recognize and create boundaries for them, set expectations for both aspects of his life. Because right now, I think we still continue to see him like drop the ball on some things here, and also feeling this fear and this stress and emotional vulnerability with really liking Claire. And so I think all of that is still kind of like an open question that I think will be fascinating to see in the finale.
Yeah, yeah. This show is doing a great job of just setting us up for this finale, and there's so many things to look out for, not just with the restaurant, but with these characters who we've spent so much time with, who we've seen grow in a lot of ways, seen regress sometimes, and it's just that open question of is is the growth that they've experienced going to last when it's tested?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not sure. And so I love that this episode is like giving us all of these logistics, setting the stakes, giving us some warm and fuzzies, but really is just saying, hey, tune into the next episode and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Yeah,
And we most certainly will.
we will indeed. We will indeed. Um, Other fun little details. Fac is part of the front of house team. I love that scene so much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Him standing in the mirror, just being like goofing off with Richie, and then him also being like, "Do I look like I know where a screwdriver is?" It's just exciting to see this character also step into something that's different from what he's always believed he could do in the past. And we don't know the backstory of how that came to be, but would love to imagine that like Richie was able to be like, hey, I think you'll be really great in this team. You seem to be great with people. Let's figure out this new opportunity for you. Let's build up the people in our orbit. And I love that Fac also gets to play a role in the actual like not just behind the scenes stuff of the equipment and whatnot, but really in the functioning of the restaurant. He is now an integral part of it. So that whole bit was really really sweet.
And I love that in the first season, Fac and Richie are having that conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and Fac wants a job. And Richie is like, no, you cannot have a job here. And does that whole like interview business, and Fac is listing all of his special skills. And then here we are, where Richie is celebrating Fac and has fully welcomed him onto the team and has found that position for him to be in as part of this restaurant. So it's just a nice little I don't know, closing to that
Mm-hmm.
that arc that started so many episodes ago, way back in the first season. And I love how their relationship has changed and shifted so much over the two seasons, because sometimes they're best friends just goofing off, sometimes they're absolutely at each other's throats and not getting along. And so it's really nice to see them here now having a more professional relationship while still being silly and goofy and fun and all of those things. So they're such a good dynamic duo, and I'm so happy that Fac and Gary get to maybe play a little bit more of a role in this episode now.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Totally. You see Richie like helping fix Fac's little tie. It's so endearing, and you're like you mentioned, it's because of the history between the two of them that makes this scene, this moment, feel that much more significant. It's similar to the arc of Sydney's relationship with her father, because we saw moments where it wasn't great. So when things are great, it feels extra sweet, you know. And the show's so good at using those contrasts and different tonal colors to make them all more vibrant, which is really, really sweet, really exciting.
And in this episode, we also get to see Marcus shoot his shot.
He does. He really does.
He sure does.
And he does it in such a Marcus way too. You know what I mean? Like so gently. He's not, you know, coming out with the bravado, but just a sweet little like, do you want to go get some food, baby? No, okay, that's fine. You know, just the it's so tender and gentle in the way that he doesn't put her on the spot, and when he detects that like maybe she's uncomfortable with it or not totally like jumping on the opportunity, he also like helps smooth it out a little bit too with her, so it doesn't feel weird and awkward. I think there's like a way that maybe he was explicit about it, and then she has to say no and decline, but he kind of gave her an out a little bit too. So like I think all of that was just, it's so him to do. And I think Sid's reaction is also so characteristically her, to be like kind of making a joke of it and like, you didn't really mean that, right? And clearly she understands exactly what is happening. But this is her way to also weasel her way out of this uncomfy situation too. So I think that is really fascinating. It's just like perfect for those two characters. Like, of course, those characters would do it this way in how this would unfold. In the same way we were talking about in the previous episode, that like Tina and Ibra reconciling and having that whole conversation was so the way those two would, which is just really, really satisfying to see when our characters are behaving exactly how we expect them to behave as humans.
Yeah, but it's also in a way that's still interesting and dynamic. You know, I love that like Marcus is like, "Hey, like what are you doing afterwards tonight?" or something. Like super chill like that. And Sydney's response is probably barf like 40 times. You know, like it's such a Sydney thing to say, but it doesn't feel boring or stale. And the way that the writing continues to progress these characters in a way that feels absolutely right without ever putting them into a box is just really impressive to me. And I love the way that that whole conversation unfolds as they realize what's happening, and then they try and like both back away from it in the most awkward way, and they both see that it's awkward, and then they just separate and go their separate ways, and then just like don't refer to each other again for the rest of the episode. And all of that just feels so right for these two. It's perfect.
Yep. Sydney's walking away being like, oh, fuck, crap, what do I do? That was really uncomfy. Yeah. No, it is so the way that they would handle that situation. Because the thing is, like, we've seen them do similar things in similar uncomfy conversations. You know what I mean? And so it feels right that like for this kind together, for both of them, of course, they would both react it that way. Marcus is just such a gem. Come on, Sid. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but also if it's anyone, he's a great choice. And they are so different in a lot of fascinating ways, which is why I think it works versus I think her and Cormier are just way too similar. Like it would just be potentially quite volatile, but I think the energy and dynamic between Marcus and her, they complement each other really well. And I think that's why you see their friendship be so strong, because they can connect on these certain things, but and banter and spar, but also they are very different in a lot of ways. And so they really help each other draw out different sides of them, which is really fun to see in the way that their relationship grows over time, whether it's friendship or more. It's just really neat to see them connect in really meaningful ways.
Can we also talk about Marcus's bomb dishes that he created? And I love that they all come together to tell a story too. And then, of course, ending with the Michael as the final one. And you can just see just like Sydney uses food as a way to help take care of people, you can see some of that in Marcus too. And there is that perfection and that dedication to the craft and all of that, but there's also such empathy and compassion in what he has created, and you can tell that he has just put his whole heart just on the plate, and it's worth it, and it's cool to see him having progressed so much really quickly
Mm-hmm.
too, because we in the episode when he was in Copenhagen, he shares about how he started in this business, and he hadn't been doing this for that long, and so then for him to already be at this place where he's creating dishes of such high quality, you just want to celebrate him, because he has honed his craft, but he's not stagnant and he's not content with staying there, but is going to continue to push himself, hopefully in healthier ways than we've seen him in the past.
You mean when he was in his little cave making his donuts all throughout season one?
Hello.
Yeah, and there's the other character that we really get to see just absolutely thriving is Tina. And I think, obviously we've seen Tina hone her craft in general and go to culinary school. And she's obviously just doing really well. There's this really satisfying moment where Carmi tastes her bucatini or something like that. And he's just like, this is really incredible, Tina. Like, good job. But what I also love is that we get to see Tina leading a team and a crew of other chefs. And I feel like throughout a lot of season one, we saw her be a part of the team and be led by some of these other bigger, stronger personalities that maybe had more experience. But I love seeing her step into this new role and lead her crew. And I think that's a really fascinating aspect of leadership that the show is depicting, which is that great leaders create more leaders and develop them and call them into it, and so that they can now take care of their flock. And I love seeing the way that Tina is kicking ass in this episode. She's firm and decisive in the way that she's calling out like orders and instructions and creating clarity for her team. But also she's just got this really great attitude that she's approaching everything with, and it's just really neat to see her absolutely thriving. And I feel like she's grown so much over the course of this season, but it's cool to see the way the show celebrate both aspects, her craft in and of itself, but also the way that she leads a group of people.
Yes, Tina. uh, we just love her and just love to celebrate her, and what I love about this episode is that moment when she tells Carmi that she's still using his knife, and he responds that he didn't ask for it back.
Yeah.
And so I love that it isn't just this like, oh yeah, we believe in you, or oh yeah, we see you. Like, Carmi has invested so much into her, and what a sign of, I respect you, that is yours. Like, it's this like passing of the baton kind of thing, and it just means so much to her, and you just see her face light up when he says that. And so that's just another one of those good leadership moments from Carmi, and then you see all of those good leadership moments from Tina as well. So it's just so heartwarming. We love to see these characters
Mm-hmm.
succeed.
Yes. Yeah. And I think what the show really understands is that sometimes it's those like moments where you're communicating something and it's not necessarily on the nose and direct that sometimes feel more meaningful and hit closer to home, because like Carmi's gesture of giving her his knife is basically saying like, I believe in you. Like, you are worthy of all of the potential that comes with this. You can be this great too. And he could say that to her as well. But I think the action and the gesture communicates and carries that weight, and she feels it too. And sometimes that hits your heart in an even more meaningful way than hearing the words themselves. And I think the show really understands that dynamic really well and pulls on our heartstrings in all the best way because of it.
Well, and the other component of that I really love is that Carmi understands the people that he's working with enough to know like what they need. So like Tina and the knife means so much to her and is so meaningful to him too. But then for Sydney, he gets that monogrammed chef jacket for her. And that is what she needed. And that is that moment of affirmation for her from someone that she really respects. So that understanding of this person doesn't need the same thing as this other team member does. And so I'm going to meet them where they're at and give them the encouragement and affirmation they need in the way that they need to receive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. And then you cut to, you know, him talking about how he feels like he doesn't understand people and he wasn't ever as good socially as Michael was. And you're like, you are, Carmi. You really are. You just need to see that it looks different, but this is the way that you care for and love on people. It might look different from the way that Mikey did, but this is your way, and it is just as wonderful and amazing and incredible and meaningful for the people that are on the other side of it. Oh, I love it. It's so good. Okay. Any other last big things that you wanted to mention before we gave out some awards?
So I just have a couple of like quick things. One of them, just shout out to Ibra for doing his serve safe videos. And I love that moment when he's watching the video so intently on his phone and then he says, I accept. I was like, yes, Ibra, you go. You accept. Yes.
I'm like, Ibra is so back. Our dude.
Yes, I love it. Yes. Welcome back, Ibra. We're happy to have you here.
It's so great.
And then just another little detail that I wanted to give a shout out to. So at when they're all in the kitchen cooking and prepping, and Carmi is kind of like walking around and like adjusting things as they're working in the kitchen, Carmi makes this comment that all of the chefs are right-handed. So like, why are the pans like over here? The interesting thing is, I think that Tina is left-handed. And I thought that that was just a notable thing that Carmi was so certain that everybody was right-handed. And I don't think she is. I'm like 96% sure that she's left-handed.
Wow.
So I just thought that that was interesting.
It's also just like a fascinating like aspect of how to like structure and design your kitchen to be accessible. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yes, the chefs right now are all right-handed, but what about when we hire the next person? Like, how do we create an environment that that person can also thrive and not accidentally pull the, I don't know, what was it, the pan off of the shelf and have it just like totally rattle onto the ground, you know, like what do we do to make, and potentially even someone within his own kitchen that is already present that is not fitting that mold that he has around them all being left-handed or all being right-handed. Interesting.
Yeah.
Good job picking on that detail.
So just a random little detail.
My last little shout out is for Richie's absolutely ridiculous pep talk speech for the whole crew.
Oh my gosh, yes.
One of my favorite characters, but I just found it so endearing because you can tell that, first of all, he starts out with, hello, lizards, which I'm like, okay, great. We love the growth for Richie, but I appreciate that Richie is still Richie. Like, our dude is very much still here. And just throughout his speech, like, what he's communicating in his own special Richie way is basically like the care for our customers, but he does it in the way that only Richie could. And I love that the show has given him a lot of growth, but also has retained so much of what makes Richie him and makes him so endearing and kept all of that as well. And he doesn't go through this like massive transformation in personality. Yes, he's growing and evolving in really healthy ways, but the parts of him that are still foundational are still very much there. And I thought that was just like a perfect way to show that he is stepping up, he is leading, he is growing, but he's getting to do it in his own special way. So I found that whole scene incredibly endearing.
And I love Carmi's face the whole time that Richie is talking.
Oh, it's so good. I love Richie's own face when he says luxuriation and he's like, yeah, that's not right.
Yes.
And then he just keeps running with it. He's like, yeah, luxuriation. That's right. It's great.
Amazing. It's those little details that make this so fun, because you can watch anywhere on the screen and all of the people's reactions are hilarious for what Richie is saying. It's great.
But you know that he's feeling it, like this is profound for him as he shares about what
Oh yeah.
Gandhi said or the Buddha said or whatever it was. Some spiritual leader.
Right.
Oh, so good.
Great. Way to go, Richie. We believe in you. Way to rally the troops.
Yeah, I don't know if they're feeling rallied, but they're definitely entertained.
I mean, close enough.
Yeah.
We're baby stepping it,
All right. Well, let's give out some awards, shall we? The first category is for Top Chef. Who's getting this award?
I had so many options for this one. So it was hard to choose, but I think I'm going to give it to Fack for keeping a screwdriver in his suit jacket pocket.
Oh, it's so great. It's so great. His little comfort screwdriver, Some people have their safety blankets, but he's got his screwdriver.
Hey, you never know when you're going to need it. So he was prepared. Way to go, Fack.
Indeed. My choice for this award is going to Sid's dad for just being emotionally aware and looking out for Sid as she potentially puts too much pressure on herself and just helping to alleviate that in the ways that he can.
Oh, yes. Amazing. He is just a gem. And I'm so pleased that we got that moment between them in this episode.
It's really sweet. It's really sweet. And it's something that he has seen his daughter for years and her patterns and her tendencies and can speak into her life in that specific way. I think maybe some of the other characters on the show might be aware of that, but perhaps not as much. And just as the specific ways that he can see patterns in her and recognize them is really cool. We need those people in our lives, and we need them to be able to share honestly with us too. Okay, the next category is Achievement in Chaos. Who or what moment or what thing is getting this award?
I'm going to give it to Sid for freaking out when Marcus shoots a shot.
Yes. Oh, she has no chill in that scene. She's trying to have chill. They're both trying to have chill. No chill was to be had.
Yes. He was much more effective in having chill than she was, because she loses her mind a little bit.
Which is also just so relatable. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. No shade on her, but it's hilarious.
My choice for this award is for the Parm for Carm block of package that was delivered. It's great.
Yes. Love it.
So good. Next category is spiciest line. I wonder if we have the same one for this one. Maybe not. What's yours?
Gosh. Okay. So I had two options written down, and now I'm like, oh no, am I going to pick the same one as you?
Shot. Don't screw this up.
But here's the thing: when I have a 50-50 shot, I always choose wrong. So I'm feeling stress right now about the spiciest line.
All right. Well, here we go. Okay, the grand reveal.
The one that I had picked initially, I'm not going to be an agent of chaos. I'm going to stick with my original pick, is when Sugar says to Carmy, "Do you have a phone these days?"
Nice. It is not the one that I have, so that is cool. But now I'm intrigued. If your second choice is the same, or maybe also something totally different as well, what your runner-up was. My choice
we will see.
Is Marcus naming his third dessert. Number 3 is Sydney's donut in parentheses after Carm destroyed it like a little bitch. Which then he follows up with, I don't really know where that name came from.
Oh, it's so good.
It's great. And I love that Carmy plays along. That's when you know you're good. That's when you know water's under the bridge, is when they also play along and can make fun of themselves as well. I think Carmi said it's like, yeah, that guy must be feeling like shit for the rest of his life, and just the way that we have put that behind us a whole season ago.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a whole season ago, indeed. Yeah, so much has happened between now and then.
Yeah. Okay, looking ahead, we've got one more episode left, season finale. What are you excited for?
Yeah, let's go. Season finale. Let's see if the growth in these characters is going to continue when they're stressed, and how this show, especially the last couple of episodes, has really been highlighting the importance of a team and relying on one another and depending on one another. And this is about to be a really stressful time in the kitchen. Yep. And so are they going to be able to rely on each other and not just revert to relying on themselves? And we will see what happens.
We shall indeed. My first bullet here is basically just says, here we go, with about 15 O's. So that's the first one. Yes. It's like, okay, go time. The second one is, I think I mentioned it earlier, but Carmi's growth, I think, is the biggest open-ended question. He could really go either way, whereas I think some of the other characters have really taken like a lot of forward momentum in their growth. Carmi's one where I'm like, I'm not sure. He's also unsure. So I think that will be really fascinating to see what the show does with him. And then we ended The Bear season 1 with a little bit of like a tail end little teaser for an anticipation for what was coming next in the next season. So I'm curious to see if they do or don't do that for the end of this one as well, to tease season 3. Like, will a new character show up? I don't know. Like, will we get a whole new thing to tackle next? I don't know. So will they tease or will they not tease? They'll just let it be and then hit us with season 3 coming up in just a couple of weeks, which is very exciting.
Yeah, this is a perfect little appetizer because season 3 is coming. We're ready.
Yep. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of episode 9. You can find it available on Hulu. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today as we continued our journey through The Bear Season 2. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review letting us know your thoughts about episode 9. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TVNSPod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We'll be back very soon with our review and discussion of the season finale of season 2. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again real soon.